Hello, wisdom seekers. We're back again this week, and we're thanking the Lord again for another beautiful week of just beautiful weather. And my favorite time of year is fall. And if your yard is like mine, it's covered in beautiful, beautiful leaves that I have a hard time not gathering every time I go out and do my walk, because they're also beautifully colored. We want to start again with our prayer board. We're praying for Jo Ellen as she starts helping her mom during these initial first first few weeks, and helping her along the journey that they will both be taking, and the family as well. We also are still praying for James and Olivia, and also Jody's daughter-in-law, Angela. Her sister Amy is in the hospital. She has diabetes, and the concern is that she does not catch COVID as she is in the hospital. It's a great concern. We do want to pray for Amy in the hospital, Angela's sister. But we also want to thank Jody and Crystal and Brooke, all of their very hard work as they're baking their little brains out right now to have all of these goodies that people are buying for the donations to the scholarship fund for our kids at BenUI. One of the most important things that we do at BenUI is getting the scholarships for the kids that we have given and the ones that we will give out. But I salute what they do each year. It is very hard work, and they always do it with such a loving heart. We thank you for that. So we start today. This is our next to the last lesson in Isaiah, and it is truly, I know I say this a lot, but it is just a tremendous lesson with so many wonderful, heart-changing verses that I think that if you look at it, you will see a lot of things that you might be able to change yourself. I saw myself in a lot of these verses, that it convicts, and that's what Scripture is supposed to do. So we see that you see God's heart in these verses, but we are also going to see the heart of God's people in this. And at first it's not very reassuring, and we are always saying they had God right there telling them what he wanted. And here we have Isaiah the prophet telling them what God wanted, and yet they keep getting so many things wrong. And we are confused by that. They did so many things wrong, but we do too. We do too. So as we start these, it's chapters 58 through 60, but we will only be in chapter 58. Some commentaries put this in the after the exile, which they have returned to Jerusalem, and that they have fallen back into their old ways. Other commentaries put this in before the exile. But that's not really, to me, the issue. The issue is it's in chapter 58 through 60. And it is here by the Holy Spirit's designation. If you looked at the Psalms, 119 was just not thrown in there as 119. It was put there for a very specific reason, just like 51 to 17. So we are to learn from where the Scriptures are and apply them to ourselves, no matter where they are. We don't concentrate too much on before and after in this lesson. So as we start our focal verses, the first ones are 1 through 5, but I'm going to read 1 first, and then we will start sort of kind of analyzing some of these to see where the Israelites were, quote, going wrong. So in verse 1, cry out loudly, don't hold back. Raise your voice like a trumpet. Tell my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sins. So this was a trumpet, a ram's horn, And this was an instrument that had a very distinctive sound, and it would be often used to warn the people of dangers. This was a very distinctive horn, very distinct. It reminds me of the long horn that they use in that, I think it's a cough drop commercial, and the guy is blowing on it, and it has this very distinctive, loud sound that comes out that can warn a lot of people at a great distance. And so both elements are coming out in this, is that this is Isaiah's cry to the northern and the southern kingdoms, Israel and Judea, that God was chastening them, all of his people. But in this verse, we don't know why. So what was he chastening them for? Let me read verse 2. They seek me day and night and delight to know my ways, like a nation that does what is right, that does what is right and does not abandon the justice of their God. They ask me for righteousness, righteous judgments. They delight in the nearness of God. Now this to me sounds like a beautiful verse, all glowy and righteousness. It sounds like they're doing exactly what they should. But if you look at this closer, you will see that it has a very sarcastic tone to it. Read it further, you will see that they are like a nation that does what is right. In reality, they were not that kind of nation. They did not do what was right, and they did abandon the justice of God. They were acting in a way they thought would please God, but their actions revealed a different picture about their heart condition. Their reasons for desiring things were all wrong. We're going to see their attitude as I read just the first part of verse 3. Let me read this to you. This is the Israelites talking. Why have we fasted, but you have not seen? We have denied ourselves, but you haven't noticed. The point of fasting is to draw closer to God. Self-denial should be a greater dependence on God himself rather than a demand for God to give something back. You can see in this exactly what they were doing. They were wanting something from God just from them performing a ritual. So the rest of this is, look, this is God. Look, you do as you please on the day of your fast, and you oppose all of your workers. Now this is a startling disconnect on this. You fast with contention and strive to strike viciously with your fist. You cannot fast as you do today, hoping to make your voice heard on high. Can you imagine this startling disconnect between the people's fasting and their actions, particularly towards others? The people were said to oppress all their workers and do as they please. Clearly, the Israelites saw no connection between the ritual trappings and their everyday behavior. They continued to fast, and they viewed it more like a magic ritual that would make God perform what they wanted. That's just so totally off base. In verse 5, will the fast I choose be like this? A day for a person to deny himself, to bow his head like a reed, and to spread out sackcloth and ashes? Will you call this a fast and a day acceptable to the Lord? Well, of course, the implication to this is no, they were as far as they could possibly be from the correct understanding of fasting. They wanted something from God, but they did not want God. That's the important thing here. They were wanting, but they were not willing to want God himself. You know, the little thing that we do with the church. Here's the church, here's the steeple, look inside, and here's the people. They were willing to do what they needed to do inside the church. But once pulled apart, when they're in society, they didn't want all of this. They wanted what God could do for them, but they weren't willing to act like God wanted them to do. They were suppressing the people. And that's what God was noticing. It was a heart thing for them that they needed to have changed. I'm going to read verse 6 and 7, and this is when it becomes so amazing on how specific this really is. 6 and 7. Isn't this the fast I choose? To break the chains of wickedness, to untie the ropes of the yoke, to set the oppressed free, and to tear off every yoke. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, to bring the poor and homeless into your house, to clothe the naked when you see him, and not to ignore your own flesh and blood? These are just two amazing verses. This is so much deeper than just a blanket, love one another. This is getting down to we need to be more aware of the less fortunate, to be treated like equals. You know, you can see these actions are building on one another. They become more passionate as God is speaking through Isaiah. He is clarifying more than we have seen it in the past exactly what fasting really means. It's not just about giving up your food. Fasting is a reminder for you to be giving up food for other people in need. This is what they had not been doing. That was not even in their thought processes to give to other people. It is a passionate plea to encourage others, encourage other people, to make the poor and needy, to give them their basic needs, including shelter. Now, I can't build a house, but I can encourage others who do. I know that Jimmy and I saw just a most fascinating documentary this past week on a veteran who builds homes and add-ons to handicapped veterans that can't do it for themselves. It's a passion that he has. And he was explaining that if you just, for a handicapped veteran, if you go in and you build him a handicapped bathroom that gives him his dignity back, that gives this dignity to a man that did not have it back before. And that's this man's passion. And I thought, this is what we need to do. We need to be encouraging these people for their passion, for the help that they are giving the ones that are underprivileged and cannot help themselves. There are hungry people within just a couple of miles of Benue. And that's why we have been so dedicated in donating to food banks, bringing food to Benue when we could. Now, this is something that I can do. I can't build, I can't do that, but I can donate food. I can donate money for food. How demoralizing it must be to have to beg for food. We shouldn't have to see anyone begging. We should be donating so that they don't have to beg. It's a heartache to think of that. To me, it is. You know, in bigger churches, they may be surprised at how many needy, hungry people are right there in their midst. We need to have our eyes open, but we need to have our hearts open too. And that's what he was saying. That's what Isaiah is saying. You need to have your heart attitude changed. Look around. Verses 8 through 10, I'm going to read 8 and most of 9. Then your light, once you start doing this and your heart attitude has changed, then your light will appear like the dawn, and your recovery will come quickly. Your righteousness will go before you, and the Lord's glory will be your rear guard. At that time, when you call, the Lord will answer. When you cry out, he will say, "Here I am." I'm going to stop right there. These are changes that occur when your heart changes. You know, right now, autumn, like I said, this is my favorite time of year. All of the leaves are changing. But that's just not an accident. It changes from the inside out. It's a total change. And that's what has to happen here. It's not a one-time thing. It's a total change when you get this heart attitude change. Light would appear like the dawn. This is clearer vision of things that you haven't seen before. It's people walking in light instead of darkness. Recovery would be quick. That's a truer fellowship with God, and that his righteousness would then go before you when that rich relationship is now forged again. The righteousness going before you. The Lord's glory would be behind them, the rear guard. What a sense of protection. So now they have the righteousness going before them. They have the Lord's glory behind them. This is reminiscent of the pillar of cloud and fire of the children of Israel in the wilderness, of their protection of the Lord before them, the Lord behind them. This is protection at all times. And when you call, the Lord will answer. He cannot answer. You know, the Lord wants to be intimate with us, with our prayer lives. But when we have all this oppression, he can't get through that brick wall. And Isaiah has some beautiful things to say about this. Look in this verse, in 9. If you get rid of the yoke among you, the finger pointing and malicious speaking, and then going on into 10, and if you offer yourselves to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted one, then your light will shine in the darkness, and your night will be like noonday. How enlightening these verses are. Once you start these stair steps, it's all not in one day. It's offering to help someone in the grocery store pick up something that's too tall for them, and they can't believe someone has offered to help them. It's such a little thing at first. It's being euphoric when you can donate to the food bank. It's being euphoric when you know at some point we will be able to bring our food back to our donation box that we know that are being helped with people who are hungry. And at Christmas time, hopefully, if not this Christmas, then soon after that, we can bring clothes that we can donate to people in need. These are things that we cannot close our eyes to. This is what God blesses when we do it without being ritualistic about it, but with a heart attitude about it. Just beautiful verses, beautiful verses. Then our last two verses, 11 and 12. Oh, these are so beautiful. The Lord will always lead you, satisfy you in a parched land, and strengthen your bones. You will be like a watered garden and like a spring whose water never runs dry. Some of you will rebuild the ancient ruins. You will restore the foundations laid long ago. You will be called the repairer of broken walls, the restorer of streets where people live. Now, these are very specific jobs. Look at all the different areas of responsibility that God would be giving But these are literal, but you can certainly see the metaphors in this. Restorer, repairer, especially the one, the repairer of broken walls. You can just see that of repairer of broken relationships between people. When heart attitudes change, the repairer of broken walls. I read a quick little article today in the paper of a man, two men that had had a wonderful relationship for many, many years in the sports arena. And something happened, one of them got his feelings hurt, and they did not speak for 25 years. Now, this is the repairer of broken walls, the wasted years of one harboring something that was eating up himself inside. This should not be. This should not be. This is something that we can help bring people together, that we can be the repairer of broken relationships. You can see how these verses, this is having peace with God, that then we can show that peace to others. You can't have a performance in church on Sunday and then just be the regular you the rest of the week and then come back again next Sunday. It just doesn't work like that. Not in the religious world. It's in our heart attitude. It's 24/7, 7 days a week. Peace is a beautiful word. It means harmony with God. Let me read you this one verse in Isaiah I thought just captured this so beautifully. It's Isaiah 52:7. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who bring good tidings, who publishes peace, who brings good tidings of good, who publishes salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. That is peace and harmony with the right heart attitude. That's a verse in the Bible that you can visualize. I want to bring you one last visual of peace. You probably have seen this many, many times in pictures. I've never had the thrill of seeing it in person. This is a statue of Christ, the Redeemer of the Andes in Buenos Aires. It towers over 13,000 feet over the whole area. Christ's left hand, which I didn't quite get in the picture, holds a cross, and his right hand is extended in blessing. On the base of the great statue is a quote from Paul in Ephesians. It reads, he is our peace, who has made both one. And naturally, there is a quite amazing story with this. In around 1900, Argentina and Chile were on the verge of war. They'd never had war before. But due to a conflict, a confrontation was right at hand. It was certain. The armies had amassed on both sides, and it was around Easter of 1900 that it was a matter of hours away that the conflict was going to happen. That's when Monsignor Bonaventura of Buenos Aires preached a passionate Easter message calling for peace. Gradually, pleas for sanity went out, and King Edward VII of Britain came in and even arbitrated the treaty between Argentina and Chile. And get this is a true story. The cannons that had been pointed at each other were melted down, and the bronze was poured into the mold for Christ the Redeemer. Isn't that just beautiful? That's what people working together for peace through Christ can accomplish when their heart attitude has changed. You know, Gideon built an altar. This is during Israel's judges' time, and he named it Jehovah Shalom, which means God is our peace. Our lesson today is centered around that relationship with God. When we do exactly like God told Isaiah to tell them, get rid of the yoke among you, the finger pointing, the malicious speaking, then your light will shine among men. It will be a shining light in the darkness. It's a convicting lesson, isn't it, wisdom seekers? What a wonderful lesson we've had. What a fun time we have together learning more about God's Word. And we'll be here again next week at the same time. And just remember, as I always tell you, that I love you. See you next week.